Welcome to Reselling Superheroes Can Be Marvelous. It's me, it's Two Dogs Digs, it's Craig from Two Dogs Digs, also known as Bad Dog. Welcome to all of you. And once again, I have to mention to Rick that that's quite an abrupt kind of boom that goes into our thing that we have to fix for the next time. So, welcome to our Tuesday Night Live show. Tonight, we're talking about something that's not as big of a thing for me as a collector, a little bit as a reseller, but something that it could be is a really huge area for reselling, and that is reselling in the superhero genre or the action figure genre. And we've got a special guest with us tonight, and it's our buddy, one of our best friends, Adrian, and he is a superhero collector and reseller. So he's a combination of both. So here he comes. There he is. Hello, Adrian.
Hey, Craig, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me here. But I got to tell you, the announcement at the end of your show last week, and next week, Adrian's doing Marvel, and what? All of it?
Yeah, all the Marvel. You're going to talk about all the Marvel.
All the Marvel.
Now, how is Mrs. Maisel?
Not the Marvel.
Wrong show.
Sorry. I'll be quiet now.
That started in just a couple of weeks, though. The new season 4 starts in a couple of weeks. So, big hi to everyone who's joined us here tonight. So I'm just going to quickly say hello to some of the folks. Julie, Becky, Kevin, Diana, Angelique, Janet, Dax out in BC, Marianne, Brian, Mr. Carl, who was really looking forward to this because he loves superheroes. I think he's like a brother from another mother, Adrian, because he actually has a Star Trek uniform that he wore on Halloween into the thrift stores.
I saw that. That was cool.
Lisa,
I have one of those too, but I haven't fitting it anymore.
Becky, who is headed down to Mount Dora. Oh, yes, I'm jealous, but we're not going to Florida. That's for sure. Tina, Greg, who's joining us with the first-time watcher, Hannah. Hey, Hannah. Lisa and Holly. Hello, Holly. Thanks to everyone who's joined us, and Debbie, in case I missed anyone. Heather. Candace. Oh, Heather married her superhero. I married a supervillain. No, I didn't.
Cheers.
Tonight, it's about superheroes. Now, Adrian, as I say, we've known each other for 35 years. He was one of Rick's best friends when Rick and I met. But we've known him all this time. And actually, Adrian used to go and do the toy shows with me. Like, he had actually worked with me at our tables at the toy shows, so Rick wouldn't have to. So Rick would have to come in the middle of the day and bring us our lunch and things like that. But most of the time, Adrian and I, in the 90s, I guess, and early 2000s, 2 or 3 times a year, we would be at a table working toy shows. And he was always looking for the superhero stuff. I was always looking for the Barbie stuff. And we actually had complementary collections, so we could look for stuff. But from a reselling standpoint, Adrian wasn't really into reselling that much back then, but gotten into it a lot more over the past few years, right?
No. I mean, I've sold collections as I've gone. Like I sold when I went to Australia, I sold everything I owned pretty much, except for a box of comics. And then I rebuilt the collection back up. So I have resold multiple times.
But now it's actually one of the things that you're doing even a little bit more. Like, you're on eBay, you're regular on eBay. You are using a cross-border shipper because we taught you how to do that.
You did. Thank you.
And you're even doing things like, which we've seen other people do, and we actually recommend when we sell stuff sometimes. We go, oh, if you don't know what it is, just put it all up there. And if somebody has something in there that they really know what it is, they'll pay for it. Like we said that one time with the Lego guys, and we ended up getting like $75 because of a little Lego feather that was only the white feather. Well, Adrian does the same thing, but only to help his collection, help him build, because he'll buy multiple lots of things, not only in this, but he's also a major collector of, I'll call it tempo, and Britain's like cowboys and Indians, and he'll buy lots literally to get like the headdress for an Indian that goes to finish off the stagecoach set, but then he'll sell everything else. So he's got tons of stuff. But I thought the best way to give people an idea of what it is that Adrian collects is to show a little example of your collection. So you can sort of see behind him, he's got a couple of
This is a little.
This is not all of his collection either.
Yeah.
So this is the main picture that we showed you that we use for our one thing. But this is one of his shelves that's filled with a couple of superheroes. And as you can see, they can run the gamut of all the different, like, it's mostly, I always say it's mostly Marvel seems to be in the, like, percentage wise. It's like a lot more Marvel than DC comics or little smaller comics. You see this giant guy over here. That's something we're gonna talk about a little bit later on. There's a big picture of him. This is one of his lovely little dioramas. So this guy, you got him when? Like about 3 months ago?
A few months ago, yeah. I just moved in here. I was moving at the time and I had it shipped to your house, remember?
That's true. But as he loves his little, you found that stair thing at, like, was that at a Value Village or something?
No, this was in a Winners type store, but in the UK. And so I told my sister to buy it and send it to me, which she did.
just so he could have this amazing little.
It's a New York fire escape
with characters. And I know a lot of you will not know who any of these characters are. You may look at them and go, I think that might be so-and-so. And I'm pretty well the same way. It's like, oh, look, there's Froggy Guy. Like, I know Jay Jonah. I don't know who that is. He looks like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
You were close. It's Frogman.
Oh, it's gone rogue. I think that's J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man.
That is correct.
I have no idea if that's a Gwen Stacy's behind
Correct.
you.
Yep, that's Gwen Stacy and MJ.
Of course, this is Doug, the super dog down there.
That is actually not Doug. It looks like Doug, but it's from the amazing Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon from the 80s, and it's Ms. Lion is the name of the dog. It's Aunt May's dog.
Oh my god! So
you had trivia. You're getting trivia.
Yeah, and that's just it. Here's some of his characters that he loves to collect. This is Storm from X-Men. You can see all the different sort of styles of how Storms come out. Everything from little sort of tiny little figures to smaller figures, action figures. This is part of Alpha Flight.
Correct. Well done.
I'm guessing on some of them because I'm not a pro at them. These are more of his, like, this is his Canadiana.
This is Alpha Flight, Canada's superhero team for Marvel.
Which, yeah, there are Canadians.
Wolverine's Canadian.
Like, Alpha Flight.
Deadpool's like, Canadian.
I recognize Jonah Jameson. Carl can name about 70% of those.
Yay, Carl! My brother.
Heather's question to you is actually, why did you decide to collect superheroes? And I think that's a perfect lead from these pictures into figuring out a little bit more about what you do. Why did you start collecting superheroes?
Well, I was a kid, an Irish kid growing up in England, and I was about 7 or 8. And comics in the UK are newspaper strips, and they're like one line of comics, and it's sort of Dennis the Menace type stuff. And the comic was called Beano, and there'd be like 7 different or 8 different strips in it. But there was always a joke at the end, and it was always about, you know, skipping school or causing trouble. And I went into a corner shop to buy some sweets with my pocket money one weekend, and I came across Marvel comics, and I'd never seen American comics before. And I opened them, and they were telling the most incredible stories. I was talking to Craig about this the other day, and he asked me what was my first comic. And when, well, here it is, Craig. This is the Canadian bad guy. Where is it? There we go. Canadian bad guy who flew the Rock over New York to kill everybody and then trap the Avengers. There's an issue of the X-Men where they save the whole universe from destruction. And here's 7-year-old me, and my mind is blown, like completely blown. And I got hooked right then and there. So I'd go back to the shop every week trying to see if they would have more. But because he'd just pick random ones and he'd get random titles showing up, I never got to finish most of the stories. So when I moved to Canada to go to school, one of the first things I did was find a comic book store and fill in back issues to find what the hell happened at the end of that story. And so I've been reading comics for a long, long time. In the 80s, when I went to, or 90s, sorry, when I went off to university and my life and all that stuff, I stopped reading comics generally, but would sort of go back and pick stuff up now and again. My collection of comics would be worth a fortune if I treated them well, but I'm a guy who believes that comics are there for to be read. And so the characters I love end up, collectibles started coming out, and the more they came out, the more I would buy. And then I got addicted. I've always been a toy buyer, you know that, in that I have Star Trek toys that fill up, you know, one side of a thing. I have toy soldiers. I have, but superheroes are really near and dear. And so the technology, particularly today, around action figures is so incredibly advanced. So the action figures you're getting today are really rather special. And so I'm currently collecting Marvel Legends, which is a 6-inch line of figures.
Now, I remember actually, because you and I used to go like searching desperately for Toy Biz, and this would have been in the early 90s. And they were these are these first action figures that I'm gonna pop that to a bigger picture of you.
This is Phoenix from the Dark Phoenix saga
on the card, and it was like every once in a while too, you'd find out something like, oh, there was also Star Trek ones that came out by Playmates at the same time. So it was Toy Biz and Playmates were the big ones.
They're over there.
And these were this was a venture that was a bit different because there's always been Batman and Superman toys and collectibles, like from back in the 60s. And you can find Superman, you can find some of those things. But strangely enough, even with Batman and Superman, some of the toys that are very old don't even necessarily hold tons and tons of value. I actually still have a Batman, I was trying to find a Batman membership club from like 1968. And it was the little pin. And I thought, oh my God, I don't need this. I'll put it on eBay. And they're selling for $8. And you'd think that, oh my God, like a 50-year-old pin would be selling for like $150, but they're not not everything in the superhero realm is worth tons and tons of money. But they've been superhero stuff, but it just seemed like in the 90s, it seemed to explode.
Yes. And Playmates is the reason that the Star Trek figures you mentioned, they were the first toys marketed to adults and children. They had collector's numbers, and that was brand new in the toy industry. And literally, since Playmates did that, other toy companies like Hasbro started doing that as well. Marketing.
G.I. Joe wasn't really... Yeah, G.I. Joe wasn't really an action. I mean, it's an action figure, but it wasn't thought of as like a superhero or a comic book hero. And I think that's a distinction that sort of blends itself in some ways. Is like action figures can be superhero, but they also can be G.I. Joes. Like a G.I. Joe is considered an action figure. And if you go right now, just even onto eBay on its own, just to get a quick look, under superhero, there's almost 1 million listings right now, including movies and everything like that. If you go into action figures, you've still got 3.6 million action figures listed in there. So you can see that there's lots and lots of people that think about these things. And as Carl actually made the comment just now, 60s and 70s kids grew up and now they want to spend their money. And, you know, that's actually very true, especially when you think about that even just generally when you think about reselling. And that's why in some cases things that are only 20 years old now are actually starting to pick up in terms of sales, that nothing to do with action figures, but items from like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because those are the people who are now in their 30s and have disposable income that remember something. But I do remember a lot of them. I mean, you're talking about your comics. These are my comics actually, that I was a very big Richie Rich person.
The death of Thunderbird.
Yeah, I was a very, very big Richie Rich person, and all those sort of more Archie comics. I did get into Howard the Duck. That was my first sort of foray into superheroes, and somehow I ended up buying a few other things. And this happens, like this X-Men is X-Men 94.
Yeah, and Thunderbird dies in that comic.
And this is actually can be valued right now is selling for up to $5,000-$6,000, depending on what it is, if it's graded. This is a What If, which was a TV series that just got brought back out by Disney Plus last year. bringing this What If into different animated shows. And this was one of the bigger ones for that, which is what if Jane Foster had found the Hammer of Thor. And this is probably about a $500 to $600 comic as well.
So
and then
that's
even some things that are weird, like the Creeper. Like, still a superhero, but a superhero that probably nobody really knows. Beware the Creeper.
Oh, he's very popular with DC fans, actually.
Number one, and this is probably about $100 and some odd comic. And again, these are all from when I was growing up. And that's the thing, is comics can be the first place that a lot of people start thinking about stuff. So I thought I actually had a photo of your comics here. And by the way, a bunch of people made comments about Beano.
Oh, really? They know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, we have Canadians in here, so let me just see. Like, well, Lisa was like, Captain Canuck, Alpha Flight yells Carl. But where did I see that? Diana, love my British comics, Dandy and Beano. Lisa says there's Beano at work. Diana has Beano and Dandy annuals from when she was a kid. So Heather actually made a comment. Comics are good for kids who really don't want to read, to try and get them into reading. That's true.
Right.
And yeah, as the figures that you mentioned, that figures are getting great in terms of quality. Carl says quality of modern toys are crazy. Kevin made a comment. McFarlane figures are crazy detailed. Yeah, I think McFarlane is actually one of the first ones that got extremely detailed when it went into the Spawn. Because I remember the Spawn action figure series coming out, going, "Holy crap! This is more detailed and gross." Compared to anything else that I had seen anywhere.
The only drawback to McFarlane figures is they're made of very brittle plastic, so you better make sure they don't fall off the shelf. Otherwise, you'll be crying.
Spoilers. So-and-so dies in that comic. Spoiler! And Becky liked Richie Rich. Yay! I'm debating about selling them, and that's actually something I just wanted to talk to Adrian a little bit about on the comic side of things. When you think about comics, and you can see this is actually this batch here. This is just the bottom of one of Adrian's shelves. That's it. That's the bottom of one of his shelves filled with comics. So you read the comics, you reread them. Like,
yep. I give them to my nieces and nephews to read. Most of these comics in this stack here are comics to read. I have a few that are put away, which are in plastic, that have a lot of value, but there are issues in there which I've had since I was a kid. Some of them are literally from the UK with 12p on the front of the cover, not 50 cents.
And I guess when you're looking at something like that, actually, just let me show you. There's where I found the X-Men 98. Just happens to be, there's one of the 94. These, like, this is graded comics. Mm-hmm. Strangely enough, there's one that is ungraded that has got over $5,000 in bids in it.
Yep. It's really simple to tell you when a comic goes up in value. If you open a comic and the pages inside are white, then that comic, like the newsprint paper that they were printed on back in the day, if that's still white and not faded to that sort of manila color or manila envelope color, then you have a comic that's worth money. It's graded, would be graded higher.
What do you think? Just curiosity. What do you think about graded, like getting comics graded?
I think the slabs are weird. The slabs are it's like locking a comic inside a plastic vault and never getting out. The comics are meant to be read. The good news is they're available in trade paperbacks now, so you can, or even online, you can read the comics online. And so, in terms of collectibles and investment, the grading of comics, I think, is definitely allowing people to see a return on their investment in comics they bought in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, I'm debating about whether I need to get these graded before I try and sell them or not.
Well, you should. I'm going to speak about Moon Knight a little later, and a comic that's even in bad shape, if it's a popular comic, if it's graded, it'll still have greater value than a comic that's not graded that's in better shape.
Yeah. That's true.
Now, is there a price point that you look at a comic having in order to determine whether it's worth the cost of having graded?
I think that's a personal question as to what you want to do with comics. If you're just flipping them, I wouldn't bother with grading unless you think you look it up and you actually have Spider-Man Amazing Tales #1. Then in which case, yes, by all means, get that slab as soon as possible. But I mean, if you look up a few titles that you've picked up in a store or wherever you found them, and you see something's worth a lot of money, then reach out to Craig or me or even a local comic book store, and they'll tell you what things generally are worth. But we'll just go to the solds on eBay, and they'll give you an indication as well, of course.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking at with those is literally it's because of the fact that there is a huge value to a couple of those that it's like I do want to grade them, but right now grading is a really slow process from everything I've heard, not only on comic books but on like Pokemons and things like that. Yeah, Carl's just saying.
Yeah, it's a couple of years now that people get graded.
It used to be like I debated about bringing them down when we went to Comic-Con a couple of times, bringing down my X-Men's and getting them graded, and I probably should have done that like 5 years ago. Now they're still sitting here, but it is a longer term to get them graded, and in some cases, if it's a certain value, you're actually paying like 10% of the graded value of things as well as your grading price. So it's not a flat, oh, it's $20 per thing. It's like if they were grading a $5,000 comic book, they might charge me $500 to give me that grade. So that's actually something that's makes me a little nervous, but I'm trying to still figure it out. We've actually done with you. So we've taken a bunch of comic books. We've sold some a lot in our max sold auctions as well. So locally, we happen to have found that our local auctions are max sold. Comics are gold mines for us in the most part, where we can throw a single comic up. We don't have to worry too much about condition, and we've gotten some really good bids on some of the comics. We've got some flatter bids on other lots of things as well, but there is still interest in them. So you don't necessarily have to sell on eBay. There's a couple of places you can look at. Comic Book Realm is a great place to get some information on your comics as well. But you had just mentioned, actually, you talked about Moon Knight. So there's Moon Knight.
Yeah, I will scroll down just a little. If you look at, where am I? I think you may have gone a bit too fast, but that's okay. Scroll up a bit. I think you've passed what I wanted to show. Oh, no, okay, it's obviously changed. Yeah, keep going down.
I got two Moon Knight pages from you.
Yeah, it's okay.
They look the same to me, but...
Yeah, I'm sure they are. There we go. Stop right there. Just bring it up such a touch so you can see those two comics. So the point I want to bring this up about reselling is when you're looking at comics on a stand, and if they're a couple of bucks, you're thinking to yourself, is this worth it? Look at the year it was published and the price. Look at the comic manufacturer. Is it Marvel? Is it DC? Is it a mainline collectible comic line that's going to have a strong following? And then look at the comic book. And if you look at this comic book, we have Moon Knight, right? And Werewolf by Night, number 32, which happens to be the first appearance of Moon Knight. Well, this comic was worth a fair chunk of money, but then Disney announced they were doing a Moon Knight Disney Plus series, and the comic jumped in value. So similarly, if you were looking at comics, how do you tell? I've got here, for example, I have a bunch of Cloak and Dagger comics. So there's Cloak and Dagger number 1. Here's a Spectacular Spider-Man number 82. Cloak and Dagger number 1. Cloak and Dagger number 1. And Spectacular Peter Parker number 54. Right? And one of these books is the first appearance of Cloak and Dagger, who had their own TV show on Hulu a few years ago. And this comic jumped in value when that TV show was announced as well. So if you keep an eye on what's going on in popular culture, particularly with Marvel and DC movies and TV shows, and then you'll say, okay, if I see the first appearance of somebody, and it's easy for you to find that out. If you see the Marvel's doing a show on I don't know, Squirrel Girl, and then you just type in Squirrel Girl and see what her first appearance was. And then, sort of store that in the back of your brain. If you come across some comics and you see your first appearance, it's going to be worth more money than it would be before. But comics in general, I mean, if you're looking to buy, there's always a market for them, even if it's just a couple of bucks in your own yard sales if you need to move them on. But generally, if you're looking at anything produced in what's called the Bronze Age of comics, which is the 70s and early 80s, all of those comics have value.
I mean, even here, it's like you're looking at Marvel. This is 2018.
Yep.
This is a $27 comic from 2018 of Moon Knight, first appearance of Sun King. Now, again, unless it's blatantly on the cover that says introducing Sun King, like you may not know more of those details. But what I keep telling people, and we do this ourselves, is take a look at those things that are being thrown out. Like there's $3.95 for a couple of Dazzler comics. So it doesn't necessarily mean everything's worth a lot of money.
Right.
I can tell you that literally last week I was at a Value Village, and I forgot to load this video up. When I was at the Value Village, it had a ton of comics that had been there, and I'm just going to pop this onto the video screen. So there we go. If I go here and here and just go here. This is actually at a Value Village I was just at. 2 or 3 end caps filled with comics. Now, I took a quick look at these, and like that's an X-Men #1, but it's not a real X-Men #1. It's a newer X. But this is a couple of hundred comics that got donated by somebody.
I don't have those at my stores.
No, but it just happened to that I've seen them like that. I actually bought and flipped the Marvel comic hardcover books. I bought actually literally at the thrift store right by where you live. And I picked them up for like $3.99 a piece for like 5 of them, and I flipped, or 7 of them, and I flipped the entire batch for $150.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things you want to be able to look that up. And so I did. I actually stood there at that store for probably about 15 minutes. I grabbed, when I quickly flipped through, did a little, I looked at anything that had a price tag on it, like a original price on it, that was under $1. That's the first thing I did. Was if I saw something that said 60 cents, I grabbed it. Because I thought that's older. So now I just want to take a look at that. And if there was anything that looked just interesting to me, like there was a whole bunch of one thing which was called they were a very strange comic book brand too. It was one I hadn't heard of before. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look up Valiant because I haven't seen that. And I did a couple of lookups in there and saw that, okay, there's not a lot of these that are worth a lot of money. $2.99 a piece. Well, there were 2 in each bag, so $1.50 a piece. Did I really want to pick them up? And I ended up at the end of the day, from everything there, I took 1 bag home, and the 1 bag in it had 2 Amazing Spider-Mans, or 1 Amazing Spider-Man and a Fantastic Four, both of them from like the late 70s, early 80s, and both of them on eBay were about $20 comics in 1 little bag. So I only picked up 1 thing for $2.99, but it was a quick flip through them all to say, hey, this is something that I want to do. Oh, that's terrible. Dot said the last time she saw comics about
Heather had a quick question too. She wanted to know where you get your comics now, Adrian.
I have a pull list at my local comic book shop, which I just changed it. I wasn't in Whitby, and I'm looking for a comic book in Pickering now that I've moved once closer to home. But you pull the titles you want, and they pull them, and they order them for you and save them for you. Go in and pick them up every month or so.
That's interesting when you were talking about the things like the when we were talking about the comics, and like Werewolf that we had talked about was like $1,700, and that actual $1,700 one was a 4. That was graded as a 4 out of 10.
Right.
That was
See what I mean? That was graded as a 4, and it's that price. And if you go to the #1 of Moon Knight, which was right below that $1,700 one, you'll see issue #1 of the Moon Knight series. And I have that comic, and I can tell you, this time 2 years ago, that comic was worth like $25.
And here's an interesting thing. So this is graded as a 4 and got $1,800 for that.
Yeah.
And below, it's a non-graded one.
Yeah.
And it got $1,700 for that. So you can still get good money without having to grade. But Carl is
the
actually
best place to buy. The best place to find good comic books is church bazaars and sales. That's what in America in particular. You go to a church sale and you'll inevitably find comic books there, and occasionally you'll find some crazy good scores.
Carl, donate them to me. We'll meet you in Kingston again, and I'll figure out something. Don't donate 500 comics. Put them on local Facebooks. Do something with them. Get some money for them, because
that could be an entire max sold.
That could be an entire max
kids hospital.
Really easily, it could be an entire max sold. So that's comics. And I think the next step that I wanted to chat with you was about these other things that you collect as well. And then just so everyone knows, what we're going to do is Adrian's going to give he's going to talk to us as we go along about the 5 things that he actually constantly is on the lookout for. And this actually happens to be sort of one of the first ones. I mean, comics are one thing I'm telling you to keep an eye out for because I still see them everywhere. But this is sort of his second, and it's in his realm of collecting. So these are, I've got to switch me with you. This.
I'm taking myself off screen.
Okay. Bye, Miss. You're ready. These are Bowen statues, and there are busts and statues made by a guy called Randy Bowen. He had the license to do 1/6 scale figures, but he and his wife got into a very nasty divorce, and she won in the settlement all future income. So he's not made any more ever since. And so if you see a Bowen bust, grab it, because they're only increase in value as they get damaged and destroyed and passed from collector to collector. Grab it. Even if it's got a couple of nicks and dings, grab it. They come in boxes. I have a picture of boxes that Craig can show you. They look like that if they come in the box, but even if they're loose. There are other statue makers, and most of them are worth some value. Craig recently found a Dazzler bust, which he flipped really well. So if you see a statue of a superhero and you don't know the superhero is, don't really worry about it. Make a Google image search maybe, but these things are guaranteed money on your return.
Yeah, and these figures are like the little sort of half figure busts are about 5 to 6 inches tall. Like they're not tiny; they're 5 to 6 inches tall or so.
Yeah,
too large, too bigger. Like they could go up. There's the Doctor Strange is really much larger. Don't knock your. he went to reach for one the other day and it was like boom, and the bunch fell down. So wait, let me go.
But this is a roll of packing tape. He's this side.
So yeah, and I actually found a Dazzler for with a $7.99 or $5.99 price tag on it at a Value Village. And the thing was, these can be very delicate things. In fact, the one I had a lightning bolt that shoots out of her hand, and Adrian actually said to me, "Is that broken?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "That's surprising." And somebody had thrown it into like a Value Village, so I took that for $7.99. I actually flipped it for like $75. So you can find them. I have seen at garage sales all over the place. Not that there's hundreds of these available, but at various garage sales over the years, I probably at least at 1 or 2 garage sales a summer, I see somebody who's getting rid of some of these statues, mainly because they're large and
you can even
here's some others to show you how large and in charging, and a couple of Adrian's favorite characters too. So this is from those of you who may have watched WandaVision. This is Adrian's first favorite female character. I can't remember.
Favorite female character, yes.
Yeah. And it is Scarlet Witch. I didn't mean. Let's see. Wait, I got to get that picture up there. Oh, not that. There.
So these are statues by various makers of the Scarlet Witch, from Kodabukaya to Eagle Moss, but 3 at the back are Bowens. 4, and the bust at the corner is a Bowen bust as well. And the first statue in the middle was made in the 80s, and the other 2 were made more recently. Right? So. And there are more than this. So there are many, many other statues I don't have, but she's just one of my favorite characters. So if you see Bowen busts, a funny place, you can source Bowens actually on Facebook Marketplace, particularly from parents who don't know what they're selling, or from vengeful spouses. And also, I've even found them on eBay. You can find them listed in the wrong place, right? So most statues would be listed under comic books, the comic books, collectibles, comic books, statues, and comicettes. But they would put this in action figures or some random place like that, and people wouldn't search for the whole of eBay for under Bowen Marvel, right? And so I've come across a couple of these and got them for a really good price, even on eBay. Even with the shipping fees, I've ended up making money on them. But but mostly I'm looking for stuff for my collection. Moving on from that, other things that are things that to look out for.
Just well, actually, they're just Bowen. That's just typing in Bowen Statues, so you can see some of the things that what they can go for. And there's $1,500, $1,100. So some of the statues, and this is something actually that Adrian and I used to see all the time, because Adrian and I used to go down to Comic-Con in New York, and you would see entire booths, and all they would have, their entire booth was all these statues, all these resin statues. Yeah. And Adrian was always like, I'm just looking for this one statue. But you also, I remember you also having I found it, and you were like, 65. Nope, I know I can find it for 49 somewhere. I just don't remember what booth it was at for $49. And one of his big things was going on the last day.
Yes.
At the last hour to some of those dealers, which is a smart thing to do, to get stuff, because they didn't want to pack it up.
That's right.
Take it with them.
Yeah, my friend Lou and I would get together, and we found things on the same stall we wanted. We'd say, hey, buddy, we want this, and this, but we want a deal. Do you want to take those home with you? Really? Come on. And then we'd get them for about half the price usually. You can do that. You can do that in Toronto too. At what's
the Toronto Toy Fair
and Expo.
Yeah, Expo.
That's Hercules, one of my favorite Marvel superheroes.
And I didn't even know there was a Hercules character until I saw Adrian collecting him.
He's front and center in the middle of the picture for this video.
Oh, that's true. And then also, though, I don't think I showed that one other photo. Adrian also does, and this is his Comic-Con fan stuff. This is something I collect that really can increase in value. This is original comic book art. So what I do, I go to New York Comic-Con and I get pieces commissioned. So you'll see my favorite characters there: Hercules, Jocasta, Storm, Scarlet Witch. That's Banshee, my #1 favorite character. And depending on the artist, they can range in price from a lot to a crazy amount. But I have two pictures you can't see. They're on the wall, that not shown. They were done by a comic book artist called George Perez. George Perez is one of the most prolific comic book artists there ever was, from the 70s and 80s. And he recently announced his retirement because of he's going blind. And so literally those two sketches I have of his jumped in value by $600 the day that happened, the day it was announced. He's not drawing anymore, so you can't go to a Comic-Con and get one. So if you see a George Perez sketch somewhere, grab it, and I'll buy it from you. Now, one of the things that we were talking about before we get into some of your other top things to search for, though, was how you find out about some of these things. Because you did mention like Moon Knight, and you're like, oh, okay, well, Moon Knight's happening and something, and people are like, you find out about these things. And we do this, we've said this in Hallmark. We actually find out about things we join groups on Facebook to find out what's going to be hot, what people are all looking forward to, and everything like that. So there's a couple of Facebook groups that that are probably pretty good for people to look at. I'm not sure if I've got the names of any of them, of what they would be looking for. Would it be under Marvel Legends collectors, for example?
There are multiple Marvel Legends collectors. There's Ontario, there's Canada, there's international, there's ones that are just for selling, there's ones just for pieces, there's ones that are about news.
These are all Marvel groups, Marvel Legends groups.
And there are multiple statue busts as well, statue groups as well, and comic book groups. I mean, there are tons and tons of groups. And think of those people as customers, right? Tons and tons of customers. Because you can post in most of groups where they allow sales, you can post whatever. You can post links to an auction. Say, hey, I'm selling this next week on my Maxsold or my eBay. Check it out if you're interested. Or PM me if you want to sell it without fees, right?
And some of these are huge. Like that first group, that first Marvel Legends collectors has 19,000 people in it.
Yeah, I'm in that group.
So there's one group you may want to think about joining, is the Marvel Legends group, and we'll talk a little bit more about Marvel Legends as well. But let's go through a couple of things that you do think are interesting. Like, I can't perceive the amount of action figure groups. There's tons. There are tons. But it's something that we'll actually try and figure out. We'll put a post into the Kennel Club for Adrian's favorite 3 Facebook groups that he looks at for that kind of information. But here's some of the things that Adrian says to keep an eye out for when you're thinking about looking in thrift stores or eBay or auctions or garage sales or anything like that. So number one is this.
This is
not necessarily number one, but it's the first one, or one of them is this.
This is Marvel's superheroes role-playing game. Think Dungeons and Dragons with superheroes. Created in 1984. This is the first original box set. If you can find this thing, even damaged with missing pieces and parts cut out, you can still piece it out and even sell it complete for great money. I've never sold one for less than $50, and they show up all the time. I never put them buy it now, put them on auction, because you get bidding wars. Someone's looking for a particular piece to complete theirs, or they're looking for different game modules, because it's not just the box game. There's been re-releases of the game, but then we have the miniatures, the little lead figure miniatures that they have, and those can even go higher than the game. Look at those, banged up, nasty, badly painted.
Yeah, those are in terrible
One's
shape.
missing her head, right? And it's going for how much? $100, right?
Yeah, and those three on the bottom are missing their leg, their feet.
Yeah. Those went for $100. So those are really hard to come by and very, very popular. With the resurgence of tabletop gaming in general, I think largely thanks to Stranger Things, there's all this stuff. All D&D stuff has gone up, but Marvel-specific D&D stuff through the roof. You can flip it immediately. So if you ever see it, if it's the set with the cards, the paper, you can really piece it out, because each game comes with paper bits and little cardboard cutouts and all manner of ephemera, which you can break apart.
And you may actually even find some of these little metal figures in baggies. You're seeing them at baggie walls and things along those lines. And as you said, like, this is the kind of thing that you find a lot more could be at garage sales or things like that as well. So, but yeah, you've got sealed boxes, single figures as well, like $10 for just a Captain Marvel figure.
Yeah, it's crazy how much they go for.
I got a quick question.
Go for it.
I'm seeing the acronym TSR and RPG. Could you tell us what those mean?
TSR is the company name, and RPG means role-playing game. So it's like you would be playing Spider-Man in the tabletop game with your friends, who might be Mr. Fantastic and Captain Marvel, right? And so you would then go fight Dr. Octopus together, and you do it by rolling dice and just see who hits you and who hits who and who wins. And it's standard tabletop gaming, but regardless, there's a huge number of people who are looking for this game, particularly the 1984 version. But there have been re-releases of it, and even those are still worth money as well. And if you find some of the unused game things, like the game modules, that they look like magazines. So you'll often find them incorrectly put in with magazines and books, and it's literally like it's what you would call a quest in regular Dungeons and Dragons. It's a quest. Yeah. So there's the adventure for that story, and then you play specific characters to complete that story. Those things, gold.
Yes.
Gold.
Yes. Even with things like the game Hero Quest, I know that the Hero Quest, the add-ons to the Hero Quest game are actually worth more than the actual Hero Quest game is now. But yeah, here's something I did not know. So it doesn't sound like you did either. TSR stands for Tactical Studies Rules. That was the name of the company that they founded, Tactical Studies Rules.
Yeah, Gary Gygax.
TSR Hobbies. I remember years ago, I actually had one of the, I think it was the first or second issues of their Dungeons and Dragons books before they got real colorful. I actually got it at a garage sale like 3 blocks away from me for like $2, and I sold them for like $400 or $500 a piece.
Yeah. The funny thing is when whenever I see the game, I buy it. I put it on my shelf and I play it for a while. And whenever I need a quick cash, I just stick it on for eBay and sell it within 24 hours.
Yeah, and then again, you're just looking along the top there. These are all. This is the nice thing is in seeing the similar sponsored items. So if you happen to do sponsored items, and you were actually selling this, this is one of the reasons that you think about doing sponsored items as well. And you don't have to sponsor at 8%. Doing a 1% sponsored item means that when someone else is looking up this particular thing and they go, I've seen this item and I want to know more about this item, or I seen this item sold, damn it, I can go up to here and I can see sponsored items from this seller, but I can also see similar sponsored items, other people's versions of these things. So that's what sponsored does. So keep that in mind.
That blue one is one of those things I was telling you about. That's one of those campaign books.
The Last Resort. Yeah, it's just just a book. And
it's
99 bucks.
Like a magazine.
Yeah, just a little magazine. It's 99 bucks. Next on your little list here. Oh, that's more sparkles. That's more sparkle. What is that? Oh, this was
Megos, Mego, however you want to say it. Mego were the first superhero action figures that were mass marketed from the 70s. And they had Star Trek, they had DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Tarzan, you name it. And you can see, look at that collection of dolls. What a banged up bunch of broken garbage that is. But still, look at what it sold for. It sold for decent.
No, I'm not paying 8%. I said, but some things suggest that you can pay up to 8% for promoted listings. I'm suggesting that you think about doing promoted listings on certain items and do them at 1%, even though it may suggest 8%. Sorry, go.
Yeah. So Migos, they always have value. If you find one minted card, of course, it's worth a ton of money. But even loose, because people are looking for pieces and parts. So if you find like a cape that's not torn, the cape is worth money. If you find a pair of boots, the boots are worth a lot of money because they're often the first things lost. So if you find an action figure that's got its boots and its costume but it's missing its arms, buy it, because you can piece that thing out and make the collector very, very happy and charge a decent amount of money for it.
Now,
so Migos.
Yeah, Migos have come back out again, though. So that's one thing that you have to take a look at is in the past number of years. Actually, I think it started about 10 years ago. They started that company, and there was an alternative company, I believe, that started making their own versions of these. They might have even been using the Mego molds. So that's what you just have to take a look at. Try and make sure you look at the backs of them if you're looking for them. But again, if you find these loose at a garage sale or something like that, they're probably not going to cost you an arm and a leg at a garage sale. And
the holy grail of vintage Megos is the Space 1999 figures and the Star Trek aliens, particularly the Romulan and the Andorian. Though they've been re-released, as Craig said, so make sure if you buy one, you're getting a vintage one.
Yeah, so here's a new release of one of the ones Adrian is talking about. So this is not the rarest at 13. Given that he's sold 52 of them for $13.
Exactly.
I don't think that's the rarest.
It is not
the rare, but that original would have been worth some money.
So moving on. Other things that I always pick up when I buy would include. I'm going to name it. You're going to surprise me.
Well, no, I think, and we sort of talked a little bit about this, but this is one that we can get into a lot more detail on. So one of the things that Adrian has been notorious with trying to teach me about is looking more recently at Marvel figures. Now, it used to be that Marvel figures would come out and they would just be the character, and that's all. And it would be a character on a card. And over the past number of years, they've started coming out with these things called Build-A-Figures, BAF, Build-A-Figures. And I'm going to show you an example of the Build-A-Figures right now. So here are two of them. This is a WandaVision and a Mobius. And I'll throw it over to Adrian to talk a little bit more about this, but this is actually something that's a really interesting thing if you're thinking about looking for stuff to flip, because this is an example of arbitrage. This is stuff that is brand new right now in stores like Toys R Us's and Walgreens and things like that. And there are some things that you can get that can really do amazing for you, right, Abe?
Yes, there are. In terms of Build-A-Figures, if you look at that figure there, the one has no Build-A-Figure, that's the Morbius, but the other one has a piece of blue and gray metal in that. See, those are wings from Captain America as Falcon's wings, right? So each Build-A-Figure. So this guy here, for example, this is Sasquatch from the.
So there's that has nothing. Those are just his accessories.
Yep.
But on her side, she's got extra hands.
Yep.
And this wing, and it's not her wing.
No, it's part of Captain America's wing.
So now go.
This then is Sasquatch from Alpha Flight. And he was a Build-A-Figure. So you'd get a bunch of figures, and then to build him, you get this arm with one guy, this arm with another. Here's another example. This is Armadillo.
Can you hold him back a little bit further?
Who I'm trying to build right now. As you can see, I'm missing an arm here, over here. This thing's backwards thing. So this thing here, I'm missing the arm that comes with J. Jonah Jameson from the Spider-Man No Way Home movie.
So you have to
build the figure, and you can sell the whole figure sometimes for a lot of money. But the thing is, they've been doing this since Toy Biz still had the license for Marvel figures, and so Build-A-Figures were a way of making you buy the whole line of toys, right? So if you have 5 toys in the line and they're all super, but one's a stinker and it becomes a peg warmer that no one buys. If you put a Build-A-Figure piece in with it, people will buy it anyway to get the Build-A-Figure piece. So why Build-A-Figures are important to you is I'm saying they show up all over the place. They don't often show up in baggy walls because people, the staff at Value Village or wherever, will see an arm come in with a bunch of toys and go, well, that's just an arm. No one wants that, and they'll throw it away. But if you go to a yard sale, and this is a great place to buy Build-A-Figure pieces, you see a bunch of action figures. If you find an arm, a leg, a head, a torso, a cape, buy them, right? This, I wish I could use my pointer, but the 2 big chunky legs in the middle there, they belong to a character called the Blob, one of the rarest Build-A-Figures out there. You can sell those legs for a chunk of change. Similar with the Apocalypse, the big A groin up there. Then the yellow red splotchy one, not worth much at all, but still worth more than what you'll pay for it. So you'll get them. They'll show up at baggy walls occasionally, but usually yard sales is the best place to find these because mums will just throw a bunch of action figures in a box, and in there there'll be these arms and legs that she thinks no one will want, and you can usually get them for free.
Well, I think that's the amazing thing, though, that you're saying is this is the type of thing that you might see if you happen to be able to see, if you're lucky enough to go to a toy thrift store that has, or even like sometimes church bazaars and things like that, if they happen to have like a bag of stuff, and you'll look in it and you'll see these pieces and you'll think, this is a bunch of busted up crap that I don't want. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's not necessarily busted up crap that you may not want. It may actually be an expensive groin that belongs to somebody.
What's really fun for me with Build-A-Figure pieces is I have a multi-listing on eBay, and so this auction or this for sale page has been running now for 4 years, and all I do when I find more Build-A-Figure pieces just add another category, and then literally I just sell and sell and sell and sell and sell.
Here's a good example of how it actually gets like
built. So that's Juggernaut, who's an X-Men villain, and so you got his one leg in one figure, his groin in another figure, his arms in another figure, his head in another figure, and then you collect all those figures and build the pieces.
So you had to spend and these figures when they retail, like those when I showed that picture there of the Scarlet Witch, that Marvel Legends thing is like, depending on where you go, US or Canada, it can be $17, $20, $29 up to like $30 or $40 just for the single figure.
Yeah, there's been a major price increase because of the plastic shortages.
And so to build this figure, it's not only as a collector are you getting the figure you want, like it may be an action figure that you want, a superhero you want, but you're spending like $200+ to get all the pieces of him.
Yeah. And the older they are, the more harder they are to complete. There are people who've been trying to complete figures for years, and they'll pay anything for that one missing piece. And so you never know what you have until you list it, and then sometimes or you research it. And if you don't know what the figure is or where it's from, because DC does these as well, so they call them click and connect figures. There are great websites, and one of those is the Marvel-ous website. Which I think if I could. Look it up for you now, but I'll tell Craig what it is, and he'll leave a link later. And it lists every Marvel Legend action figure ever made by Toy Biz and Hasbro, and also identifies the Build-A-Figure and which pieces the Build-A-Figure pieces were sold with which figure, right?
Well, even when we went into the Facebook groups there, if you go further down, you'll see there's actually
Yeah.
11,000 people in the build-a-figure trade spot.
Yeah, because if you want to build Sasquatch and I've got a leg and I want to build Armadillo and I need a foot, we can trade for free.
So these are all 4,000 or 5,000 member build-a-figure parts, buy, sell, and trade parts.
Right. So you're not going to get rich on build-a-figure pieces. But what they can be is a nice $20 flip, right, for an arm.
Well, as you said, you've had a bunch of those things where you've had them listed with like how many years now? You just keep adding to it and adding to it.
4 years I've been doing that. Had that listing up.
I'm trying to find that one. I had one picture I just wanted to show, which I gotta see where I put it. There it is. So this is actually one of the fun ones too. Is this build-a-figure? Actually, Adrian has. This is Stiltman.
Stiltman.
And the funny thing to me about Stiltman was a build-a-figure. Adrian taught me about this. But Stiltman was a build-a-figure, but he came like Juggernaut did. He came in those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd he go? He came in those pieces, but some people want to make him really tall. So that is a whole bunch of sets of Build-A-Figure legs, right?
Yeah. And so Hasbro was really smart, and they put the legs in with a generic ninja figure, which if you wanted to build an army of ninjas to go fight Daredevil and Elektra, you'd buy as many as you want of the ninjas, and that meant you could make. There are people who have Stiltman who's like ceiling height tall.
Yeah, you told me about that. Where you've got people who've got like 6 foot tall, and it's all these legs because that character could actually do that kind of thing.
Cool.
Anne had a quick question is about the feet, but I think generally, do you have any indication on what these kind of Build-A-Figures are versus something that is worthless? So when you're looking at pictures of stuff like this, is there something that gives you a better idea? Do they have better looking connections, or obviously you're going to look and make sure that the connection pieces aren't broken?
Yeah. On the feet, the answer is yes. So on the feet, if you look at this guy's foot, if you can show that up quickly, Craig.
Yep, I'm going to flip to you here. Yep.
You will see that there are markings, and it says, Hasbro, Marvel, blah, 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 whatever. But the rest of the pieces, no, you don't know. But if it's roughly sort of in 6-inch scale, but bigger, because they're usually Build-A-Figures are bigger than regular figures, it's a safe bet. I
was also saying, and think about how these things like this looks as a connector pieces, like little.
Yeah.
So if it looks like it's been busted off, then it possibly has been busted off. But if it looks like it's all there and it just looks like something needs to snap into it, then that might be something that is of more consideration that you'll see them. And again, this is something I never thought about looking. When I see pieces in a baggy wall, I probably have passed them by, and I don't know how many pieces of Build-A-Figures I may have passed by over the while, and Adrian may have picked them up. But it's one of those things that just to keep an eye out for. And again, Adrian just keeps adding them when he buys figures for his collection, and he doesn't like the other piece. He just throws the Build-A-Figure piece onto his thing as a part of a selection of what you can get. There's this Build-A-Figure thing. And then actually, and this is what we were saying, it just was another link he had. This Build-A-Figure parts lot, a whole collection, $380. So that's somebody just selling Build-A-Figure parts.
Yep.
$290 just for a bunch of legs.
Yep.
But they know what they're doing because they've got in there like probably Dormammu and Strong Guy and things like that are harder to find pieces.
Right, but you can identify the figures really easily. There are many websites you can identify them, even the pieces.
Wait, I'm shocked and looking at these things, seeing like these little pieces of what I thought would be nothing.
Yep.
$100, $150, things
Yep.
like that for these.
Yep.
There's one more.
X-Men alert!
I'm just trying. I gotta find it now.
This is one of my favorite games to play, and Rick hates it. It is a Marvel superhero game that will show up at the Value Village.
Hate is such a harsh term.
Yeah, you hate everything.
Sorry.
It's a board game. I know we did those just recently, board games, but it's a board game that's uniquely Marvel. And it came out, I think, in the 90s. And it's a game that has little plastic figurines of all the characters and cards with their powers. And the goal of the game is to capture the bad mutants, and you play the X-Men. And that game, did you find the link, Craig? Is it not?
No, I had to go search for a new one.
Okay. So if you go to the solds and then hit by highest, it'll give you, $150 for a sealed, brand new in-box game, right? Now, even scroll down and start seeing some of the stuff that's not together. So even opened, it's still $50. You're buying it for $3.99 at Value Village. But look at the cards, just the cards sold for best offer of $34.99. But some people even break it down like this: one figure, one card, $10. So if you've got there's 24 figures in the game,
Yeah.
That's $240, right?
Yeah.
So the game can be pieced out, it can be sold as a whole, but it's an easy flip. You get it, you can flip it immediately. There's a high demand for it.
Holy geez, that's one you should have grabbed.
Yeah, if I'd seen that, I would have grabbed it. Trust me. So there's that, and then of course there's clothing, and I'm wearing a T-shirt here, and I grabbed a couple of other things. If you're at the Value Village or wherever, Captain America shirt, we got X-Men shirt, we got a Hawkeye shirt, and baseball caps, Captain America baseball cap. These things, grab them. Always grab them. You never know. Even if they're mass produced in North America, they may not be produced in Italy, right? And there are fans all over the world. And sizes in particular, very large sizes are very popular because many comic people live in their basements. But also, similarly, so do petites, right? Exactly. We're both wearing our superhero shirts today. So yeah, it's have a look through the T-shirt rack and grab them. They're always an easy flip, and what's more, you can sell them or list them in quilting as well. Craig and Rick have seen the quilt I have at my place, and it's a quilt made out of T-shirts, superhero T-shirts, and it is great, like a huge. Really,
that's an amazing quilt because they cut the big squares look like comic book panels in a regular old quilt, but it just looks amazing. So.
But it's old T-shirts found from Goodwill, and so subsequently list it there as well, and you have double the market bidding on this T-shirt.
Julie just sold a Black Widow dress while we're in the show. Yay!
There we go. See, so clothing is a big deal. Anything clothing, because there are people looking for this stuff all the time. Even if it's mass produced, hang on to it. It'll sell somewhere if you sell internationally. Yeah.
That's one of that sort of leads us into our last little thing, which is in a quick summary, it's like what we got. We want one more thing we want to tell you about. But as a quick summary, so you keep in mind there's so much out there in the superhero, like we could just do an entire show just on Build-A-Figures if we wanted to, but we wanted to give you a sort of a grasp on this from somebody who collects tons of this stuff. So hopefully Adrian's given you some really interesting ideas on things you can look for.
They do have a what to buy, and it's right here.
Oh, this is the two. So this is his what not to buy. So he's got a what to buy. Here's your big what not to buy.
These are 12-inch figures known as Titan figures. They only have arms that move and legs that move. Nothing else moves. They're everywhere. At every Value Village, you will see baggies of them, and they're listed at $7.99 at Value Village. If you can sell them at $7.99, good luck, because they're everywhere, and they're designed for little kids, and they're mass produced, and they're nasty. They do make 12-inch figures, Marvel Legends, that look like this, which are highly detailed, multiple poses, and those are worth money. But these, do not pick them up. Pass them by. Do not stop and say go unless you see a red Hulk. He's the only one that's worth money, and that's only $20.
Oh, okay. And actually, I have seen. The last time I was in Value Village last week, there was a Value Village that had like 5 baggies, and every one of them that was like a Batman, a Superman, an Iron, like all like that. All those like 12-inch ones you just said with no articulation. So all they do is move at the shoulders and move at the hips. No knee bends or anything like that. And even some of them that might have a knee bend, if it doesn't look like it's well like designed, like that, just see how simple that is. So then, yeah, then that's one that you want to think about passing on. So you can find a lot of those things. Wow. Susan just Holly just found a vintage Spawn t-shirt for $140 paid out. Yes. So
yes,
just like Rockstar stuff.
Venom and Carnage from the Spider-Man villains, also really great sellers. I don't know why, but those t-shirts go crazy.
So keep your eyes open about it when you hear buzz about a new show like Moon Knight or things like that. Take a look around at them, and again, look for things that tell you that are parts for things that might be in bags. Look for things that are still on their cards. Check the dates, and always check your eBay sold before you actually pick up anything, so you don't end up wasting money on it, unless you know somebody who's a collector that you can then give them to afterwards. Keep your eyes open for comic books, especially older looking comic books. We don't expect you to go through every comic book at somebody's garage sale, but if you were flipping through them and saw, just like records, just like Pyrex, just like anything like that, if you see some of the stuff that you can really identify easily as older in comic books, it's all old, like lower priced comic books. So 35 cents, 45 cents. Those are all things that came out in the 70s. Things that are #1 issues of comics usually have a little bit more potential to resell. We're not saying go out and buy $5 ones that are a #1 until you've done a little bit of research, but there is opportunity for you to find things and flip things. On top of all of it, there's opportunities for you to do other kinds of arbitrage. As we talked to you about the build-a-figure kind of thing, the last place that we want to talk to you about is a place where Adrian ended up getting this guy. So this is this gigantic figure. I'm trying to make sure everybody can see parts of it. This is
the Sentinel.
This is the Sentinel, and it's just the figure that's at the back there. That big giant figure there, and that big figure was from
HasLab.
Yeah, and now I lost the link. There we go.
So the company
Hasbro Pulse.
Yeah, the company that makes Marvel Legends, G.I. Joe, and and what else? And Star Wars figures is called Hasbro, and they have a website called Hasbro Pulse, and on that they have a thing called HasLab. HasLab is when you they want to create a larger than life figure or vehicle or toy. Actually, even board game. They re-released Hero Quest as part of this, and they get backers, and they needed. If you scroll down on this one, you'll see that for Marvel Legends Galactus, they needed 14,000 backers to make this thing, and they got 31,490 backers. So here's the thing: it's a huge investment of money. The Sentinel, for example, that I purchased that's behind me was $300, and this one $400. But what we're talking about is a market that's only available to North America and the UK. So you can only order this in any of these figures. This is the Sailbosh from Jabba the Hutt. That's the Sentinel. There's all different kinds. So check that out. And they launch for each line of toys one of these a year. And they'll have it up for a time period. And you don't have to jump on board the second you see it. You wait and see if it's selling and doing well, if people want it. And then you can literally, on the last day, order one or order 5 if you are willing to invest much money. And then you can turn around and resell. So if you spent $300 on a HasLab Sentinel, if you go to eBay and look at solds for eBay for HasLab Sentinels, you will see that they have sold anywhere between $500 American to $1,000 American.
Well, and the interesting thing you were saying there too is the way that they set that on that first one you had is 6,000 was the target, but as they build on the target,
yes,
they add things for the same price. They don't change the price.
No, they
because
add extra.
There's already people who've bought it at $300, so they can't all of a sudden change the price. But the more people they get, in this case, they added a master mold alternative head, a body and head, a 6-inch prime Sentinel figure. All these other things came to people because they reached each goal. So it went from 6,000, probably like once they got 10,000, they gave part 1, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Now, right now, there's nothing in. They're being developed. But these are different
projects. Will become summertime.
So, yeah, Adrian is actually just waiting right now for this to be shipped.
Correct. So it's an investment, absolutely. But the thing is, people in Europe and anywhere elsewhere in the world don't have access to this thing, and so they're willing to pay for it. Collectors like me who are freaks and who want They want to have, you know, the figure that's in scale. Like if you look there in that picture of Galactus, that's Mr. Fantastic standing at his feet, and that's the scale of the average 6-inch figure to the Galactus. So it's like he appears in the comic books. He's a giant, and he lights up, and there's like lights, and his head lights up, and he comes with multiple heads and 4 different other action figures like the Silver Surfer and things like that, and even the pieces like the Silver Surfer you could sell separately again if you were to buy one and piece it out. But honestly, because they'll only ever be the number that are sold. They don't make them again. They won't revisit them and make them another way. It's the only time this thing will ever be available.
So and there they go. And here's what they said: they at 16,000 they added a Nova figure. At 17,000 they added a Silver Surfer figure. At 20,000 they added a more. At 22,000 they added the Head of Doom. So all of those things ended up getting added in.
Mm-hmm.
That's all those things you see there now got added in.
Yeah,
because they had so many people who ended up.
And if you're in America, it also comes with a free subscription to Marvel Comics. Online subscription to digital comics.
That's
in Canada, you're out of luck. So it's an investment, absolutely, but it's one of those things that if you are willing to invest, you won't lose money.
No, and it's the kind of thing that there's a lot of times we're talking now. We're trying to talk. I think about 25% of what we do at Two Dogs Digs now is arbitrage. And it's because we're finding items that are at retail. And I can tell you, when we walk into the Walmart that's near us and we go up to the toy section, I honestly doubt, unless I'm there at like some really awkward hour, there is somebody in that section at the Build-A-Figures scanning what is there. I can pretty well tell you exactly that. And as you said, actually, Adrian, there's a secret hint for the very end that we forgot to actually mention, but one of the big things is with those Build-A-Figures, there's a bunch of figures that come out in the States that can only come out in certain places like Walgreens.
Yes.
And the ones that come out in Walgreens, because Walgreens isn't everywhere, they come out in Canada at
GameStop,
EB Games, or sometimes Walmart.
EB Games, if it's a Walgreens exclusive, which are the hardest ones to find for Americans because Walgreens stores are not nationwide. There are states that don't have any, and there are also stores like in New York City where they don't carry toys. You can order them in advance from EB Games, and they'll ship them to your door. And then if you flip them to the States, you can charge almost double the price of the figure if you're, the people who are desperately looking for whatever that figure will be. Now, sometimes the figures are duds. Once in a while, like Medusa, for example, was a dud. But last year they did cosmic characters, and there were 4 of them, and they were all extremely hard to find. And because there's also the shortage, the delay in the shipping happening around the world, if things arrive in your area, you can flip those as well. I was flipping G.I. Joe Baroness figures on motorbikes for $250 a piece when they cost $40 a piece, because they never arrived in America. They arrived in Canada only.
And then luckily, still for those of us who are in Canada, we still have retail Toys R Us spaces, like full retail Toys R Us spaces. In the States, they have some that have opened up, I think, in Targets, or some stores have got a version of a Toys R Us, but we have a much bigger Toys R Us. So we're getting things up here that they can't get down there. So.
And American Target exclusives end up at Toys R Us in Canada.
So it's, again, just another way to think about it next time you're in Toys R Us. If you're shopping there with your kid, or you're shopping there with your grandson, if you're shopping there just for yourself, for a walkthrough, take a look at the stuff that's in the superhero figure area. Scan a couple of things in. If you see something in there that looks like it's selling for twice as much money,
I can tell you the hot figure coming up for that's coming up for EB Games. It's a Walgreens exclusive in the States, and it's a Baron Zemo figure. So he's a guy who was the main villain in Falcon and the Winter Soldier recently, but it's the comic book version of him. He's purple with leopard print fur on his shoulders and a purple mask and a gold crown. He looks ridiculous, but he is that's the first one of this year's theme for Walgreens figures is classic villains, classic Marvel villains, and Baron Zemo is the first one. And so
That's a Tuesday outfit, Adrian.
it's quite. Yeah, it's quite lovely. And he's a character that's only been released 3 times. In the modern version of the costume several years ago, in the MCU version where he has no costume at all, just a civilian clothes, and then this is the first time they've ever released this character in the classic comic accurate uniform. And so I can guarantee you it's going to be a hot figure to resell, because half the people in America won't be able to find it.
Now I just want to see if I got. Is this him? Hold on.
That's him. So if you find this purple guy with the big yellow belt with the sword and the leopard print shoulder pads, buy him and sell him. Don't hang on to him, because eventually they'll figure out the supply problems and the price will drop a little bit. If you find him in Canada and they can't find him in the States, you can flip him really, really easily multiple times.
Well, yeah, and I personally, I mean, there's a couple things Adrian told me about that I bought. I couldn't flip. I ended up flipping it for retail and losing 10%, $2, $3 on it. But it was okay. I got rid of it anyway. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit of something on the side. Thank you, Adrian, for giving us your top line sort of very high level review of superheroes. And if people do have stuff that they have questions on, and you're in the Kennel Club, Adrian is in the Kennel Club. So thanks for those of you who do support us. You can ask Adrian any questions you need to, and I'm sure he'll answer those. Sam Chap has got a question, which is the superhero Baron Zemo already in the stores?
No, it should be going up for pre-order anytime.
Okay.
So check EB Games website and you can pre-order.
And in the States, check Walgreens.
Walgreens, yeah. Walgreens. I don't know if you can order from Walgreens because they're a pharmacy, but maybe you can. I don't know. You have to tell me because I'm not American. But
we don't get to go there anymore.
We don't. But ultimately, if you can find the figure, it's going to be a hot one. Guaranteed.
Cool. Thanks so much, Adrian. Again, thank you all for watching here on our Tuesday night. Hopefully you've got a couple of ideas that'll be super to help you make some Marvel-less money.
Also,
DC? I didn't know how to do anything with DC, so I had to just leave that alone.
We can do DC next time. I do have DC stuff as well.
Okay, we can do DC. We can also talk Westerns and stuff like that. We can do those in upcoming shows. But I promise you I'll give you more than a week's notice.
Thanks. That's awesome.
I'm doing it. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your week. Woof.